Sometimes in runs, you have amazing luck with drops in Diablo 2, other times not so much. So today we're going to go over what to do in that second situation if you're playing with a Druid as you make your way into Nightmare in Hell. For this guide though, we're going to assume that you're using your Nightmare respec to do something a lot of players do in Nightmare with Druids, and that is switch to Wind Power. As far as stats go, you're going to go with the standard caster goal of enough strength for equipment, which is at this point probably 50 to 60 strength unless you've got some good greaves, in which case you'll be sitting at about 70. And we won't need to worry about high strength for a spirit shield until much later. The rest of your points should be going into vitality for this build, since you're generally going to be getting fairly close to enemies compared to other casters. As far as what we'll be casting, it should be fairly obvious. We're casting Wind, or more precisely, you're going to be focusing most of your early points into Hurricane and Tornado, though there are two routes people will take with it though. Investing in these alongside Oak Sage and sometimes a low point Grizzly, while others invest heavily in Wind early, only getting their summons later. Either can work fine. Personally, I tend to lean towards getting 1 point in Grizzly and then focusing on Wind until I'm done, starting with Hurricane and Tornado and dumping in as much as I can into Twister for the synergy points basically. Then doing Cyclone Armor last, since it's only increasing the damage of Tornado and the duration of Hurricane, rather than the damage of both. Usually after I get all the Wind stuff done, I'll usually either bump up Bear if I'm planning on playing solo, or Oak Sage if I'm playing with a group, and if you are playing with a group, you can kind of get away with fudging a little more in one direction or the other. With that said, the main strategy is pretty much keep Hurricane running 24/7, be an annoying noise on the battlefield, and then Twister to stun when needed, and Tornado for damage bursting. Your Grizzly is generally going to be a decoy until way later, and your Spirit will probably die, so it's up to you if you want to keep it up. You'll just need to recast it every now and then, and you'll generally be hugging enemies about as much as a melee character, so you probably want to keep recasting that Cyclone Armor as well. As far as mercenaries go, I still tend to favor the Holy Freeze mercenary. You can get an Act 2 Nightmare for this build. It's just really great value, especially for casters, since the slow on enemies helps out so much, whereas most of the other auras really don't. As far as equipment, you're going to be looking at the same advice we have for most casters. Get your mercenary resist and life leech through armor and helmet, whether this is through blood crafts, unique set items, whichever you prefer, it doesn't matter. But as far as weapons, you want to go with Insight, which is Ral, Tyr, Tal, and Soul in that order in a non-magical 4-socket polearm. This will relieve or even prevent most of your mana woes throughout Nightmare in Hell, and it can be gotten in early Nightmare quite easily through Countess runs and just farming normal cows or a good chunk of Nightmare. If you need to use Larzik quest for it, or even a cube quest, look at Volges or Bills, since they are hard capped at 4 sockets. The socket quest will usually give you all 4 if the weapon is high enough level, hence why we farm where we do, while the socket recipe in the cube will have a 50% chance of giving you those 4 sockets, unlike other polearms where it can be as low as 17%. As far as equipment, the usual caster gear tricks will work. Faster cast, resists, and stats on your rings, plus skills if you can get it on an amulet. These can all be crafted, though you'll only get marginal benefits from it if you do craft, so it's usually best to gamble or just identify random drops for your rings and amulet. Though the caster amulet can be nice, you just won't get high enough high-end mods until post-game crafting, so you might just end up with just like a +1 skills and some good mods, but that's about the limit of what you're going to get while going through the game rather than in post-game. Speaking of crafting though, a good place to get resists are through crafted gloves and boots through safety recipes. The boots providing some extra fire resist and a mix of rare mods, with the gloves providing a pinch of cold resist on rare mods too. To craft these, you just shop up the magic base items in Nightmare and combine it in the cube with the rest of the formula. Perfect Emerald, Ort, Junk Jewel, and Magic Greaves for the boots, and Perfect Emerald, Rawl, a Junk Jewel, and Magic Gauntlets for the gloves. You can gamble for these slots as well. Either one works fine. Though you would think you'd want to do the same for the belt, but honestly the safety belt recipe is just poison resist, which is generally easy enough to get, and rare belts and stuff like that can't get the mods of something else that you want to make. Instead, on the belt, you actually want to be looking for the Magic Shark Skin or Vampire Fang belts, and combine it with a Perfect Amethyst, a Junk Jewel, and an Ith Rune. This will give you a faster cast belt, something you cannot find naturally. These two types of belts also give you the maximum 4 rows of potions in your belt, which gives you the 4x4 belt that most people desire. And this faster cast will help you with the speed of your casting of tornadoes and twisters, and even mediocre mods in this belt will usually be fine, though obviously if you can swing it, resist would be nice as well. As far as the rest of your gear, it's all about those rune words. On our heads, we'll likely want Lore, Ort, and Soul in a 2-socket helmet. That gives you +1 all skills, a good amount of lightning resist, and a few other useful mods. While it can be beaten by a few uniques, this is just a super easy to get helmet thanks to Soul runes being fairly common in Nightmare Countess. You can actually put this into a Druid helm with other plus skills to even get a greater effect. I would probably hold off on Delirium for now, but it is also a good alternative later on. In the armor slot, I'll usually just keep using Stealth, which is Tal, Eth, and a 2-socket armor, at least until I find a better unique option. But if you're desperate for an upgrade and you have pretty much 2 paths, Smoke or Rain for the character. Smoke is Nephilim in 2-socket armor and gives you great resist. Rain is +2 skills from Ort, Maul, and Ith in 3-socket armor. It's otherwise mediocre outside of some lightning resist and mana though. It would be better, but the scaling on Cyclone armor is kind of mediocre, and it only has a 5% chance, unlike Bone for the Necro, though it is fairly cheap with the only harder to find rune being Mal, and even that's not terribly uncommon, but I would still generally favor Smoke if I had to choose between the two. As far as what's in your hands, I would love to say Spirit for weapon and shield, but as we've talked about in other budget build guides, you're not going to get the Monarch for the Spirit shield until late Hell, so it's more of a post-game item, especially if doing solo self-found. Thankfully, the weapon is still possible. Broadswords being the easiest to get for socket since that's their hard limit. Broadswords can't get above that. Just be sure to pick it up in normal cows or nightmare difficulty in general to guarantee it has a high enough item level to socket to that. Once you have the base, you just throw Tal, Thol, Ort, and Am in it, and you have an all-around nice caster weapon that can be used for pretty much any of your caster characters, since it's a generic plus skills, faster cast, hit recovery, and a few other nice mods. Since we can't use spirit shields until late game at least, what options do we want to go with? There's the tried and true Rhyme, which is Shale and Eth in a bone shield that you can shot from Drognin in Act 2 normal, or the Ancient's Pledge, which is Ral or Tal in a 3-socket kite shield that you can shot from Farah in Act 2 normal. Each of these providing some nice blanket resist, though Rhyme does sacrifice a little bit of resist for a handy cannot be frozen modifier, which is lovely. There are higher rune words like Sanctuary and Splendor that you can use, but usually you're better off using these cheaper options and saving your runes and then just making a spirit later, like in your post-game section. Obviously, gambling to get good rare circlets, jewelry, gloves, and boots are always options for these slots as well, so don't be afraid to try out your other options. Even re-rolling items can be a thing if you happen to get a lot of gems. Though all that said, that's pretty much how I approach the transition to Wind Druid in Nightmare, and I'd like to give a special thanks to the viewers, channel members, patrons, and Twitch subscribers that make these videos possible.